team at Berkshire Hathaway Home Service Ambassador Real Estate Company. Every Wednesday we jump on here and give a rundown what's gone on the real estate market over the last 7 days. And with joining me today is Russ Williams with Williams Mortgage. So he'll kind of cover the mortgage side of it. But first, quick tip. My quick tip is just kind of related back to Russ. Is using a local lender. Is kind of one of our quick tip, because a lot of times some people get pre-approved, pre-qualified, from an internet company or anything like that, out state. And the experience that I've had working with them, it's tough to get somebody in contact with them if you need something in a quick manner. Whereas if someone's local, if you had to, you could go to their branch office, and talk with somebody. I've had clients that are 1099 employees, or not 1099 independent contractors, and trying to get all their documentation to they're working with a company out of Phoenix, out of Arizona, and just, they explained it to them, but they couldn't get it all done, in a timely manner. So, but let's take a rundown of what's going on in the real estate market here, and give you our graphics as we go through here. So, over the last 7 days, we've had 500. Literally, it's kind of interesting when I pulled these numbers up. We had exactly 500 new listings go live over the last 7 days, and we had exactly 400 new contracts written. At the time I pulled it up, so there might be 401 now. But anyways, so as you see, we're kind of almost a one in, one out activity wise. New contracts written. I think last week we had just under 600 new listings. And we're got a couple of buyers. We haven't seen some in the price points. Kind of around that under 200, 225 price point. We haven't seen a whole lot of new inventory come up over the last week, but we've seen a lot of the new construction, as you'll see in the next graph, that's kind of, brought some of these numbers up a little bit in that manner. So sold homes, 279 happy new homeowners. So sorry about the background noise. I got my 3-year-old daughter here, got out to Connect 4, and she's just rattling around all the checker pieces. So, but anyways, joys of working from home. But let's take a look at 30,000 foot view here of what's a big picture of like kind of the Omaha and Lincoln MLS. So Omaha and Lincoln merged MLSs probably a couple years ago. And so we have 2,620 active listings for sale in basically kind of almost pretty much anything that's in the Omaha Lincoln MLS. Narrowing that down in the Omaha Metro, about 1,563. And then we have about 565 existing homes on the market here in the Douglas-Sarpy County area. We have just under 1,000 new construction listings out there. So as we take a look at that, months of inventory went down a little bit, 2.5. We were 2.6 last month. So, we're still seeing, homes obviously coming on the market this time of year. Obviously, weather's getting nice. We had a little bit of a cold spell, snowed yesterday a little bit. So that doesn't really deter too much. But making sure, I think the most important thing in this market that I'm seeing is making sure on a listing side is pricing those houses correctly. We're not necessarily in 2021 prices where they're a little bit higher. It's kind of down just a little bit, even though average purchase price has gone up. I feel buyer sentiment or seller sentiment still is, I'm gonna ask for the moon, and buyers just aren't there yet. We don't have as many buyers in the buyer pool as come out. So it's making sure we get the working with an experienced listing agent, like one here at Champions Real Estate Team, to really hone in on that price to maximize, the equity in your home. Buying side, making sure, because there's homes that are sitting out there that I see, every day they come on price reduction, price change, things like that as a buyer, let's get a good fair price on it. There may be a house that's been sitting on the market for a couple of weeks. You may, that's all depending on how motivated they are. But if they aren't educated and think their house is still, at that value, they may not, entertain yes, you can present it, but maybe we come back to them, in a couple of days and say, hey, our offer's still on the table, or maybe you lower your offer. It's just making, and having that, and that's why flip side, working with a listing agent to price that home accordingly, to know what the buyers are doing in the marketplace, because ultimately buyers determine the market, it's ultimately what somebody's willing to pay you for that house, in regards to all that stuff. So, that's the fun aspect about our business, that I enjoy the coaching side of it, both from coaching sellers and buyers. And when I'm working with a seller, I'm coaching them how buyers are working and thinking. So that way they have a better understanding of why we're pricing the house, where we're pricing it, rather than going, oh, well, here's all the comps, here's where it's at. I feel it's going to be way up here. And some of those listing agents are just what we kind of call buying the listing. Well, I'm going to tell you what you want to hear. And then you're going to get upset at me when the house is sitting on the market for a couple of weeks. And then it's like, oh, well, now we'll lower the price. Well, then some of those, as buyers see that price come down a little bit, they may offer you a little bit less. Whereas if you would have started here, you would have got that price, in that marketplace. So it's just, being around this business my entire life as a fourth generation, licensed for 16 years, that's the things that I've learned, that as you go through the different market cycles, like I said, when I first got my license in 2008, we had 6,000 homes, 5,500 homes on the market, just in the Omaha MLS. We hadn't merged with Lincoln yet. So you throw that number on there, we're probably at, 7,000, 8,000 homes in our marketplace where we're at 2,600. So seeing the ebbs and the flows and the cycles of things go up, things go down, which is true. Everything's cyclical. Yeah. So, I mean, that's just kind of my rundown. So ultimately, like I touched on earlier, when you're writing those offers, and if you do get multiple offers as a listing agent, I pay attention to who the lenders are. Being in it 16 years, I've either had clients work with them or I've had, sellers that we've had lenders work with, that their buyers are working with over the amount of transactions I've done. And it makes a difference because it's always too late. You get a week ahead before closing, and all of a sudden the lender's like, well, we're not going to close. I mean, I had a lender say, well, we're not going to close on Friday. What do you mean we're not going to close? Well, we just haven't got all the paperwork done. I'm like, you've had a month and a half, to get this big. But, you can go back to your clients. Ultimately, it's too late. You can't change lenders when you're a week out from closing. You're at the mercy of those lenders sometimes. Or appraisers or whatever the hiccup is in the get up. And that's why you have an experienced agent to kind of push those buttons and make sure that stuff is moving along as best as you can. Sometimes things are out of our control, but it's just navigating those waters. So ultimately, if we're going to be buying a house, we got to figure out what, get that purchasing power. So let's talk with Russ here and what's going on in the mortgage industry over the last week. So how are we doing, Russ?
Doing pretty well. It's interesting you brought that up, Mark. I find the statistic hard to believe, but nationwide, 16% of all financed sales fall through, and 4% of those are because of the financing, which should have been taken care of up front. But as far as where the mortgage market is at, we've seen rates kind of move sideways again yet for another week. But we also have, of course, for many folks, a holiday weekend this week. And usually as we move into holiday weekends, we see a little bit more volatility. We also are seeing that the way that the bond pricing is working, and it's mortgage bonds that drive mortgage rates. It's not anything else. It's mortgage bonds. Is that we could see it break out one way or the other. We've got a couple of things that could impact it, believe it or not. And our hearts go out to those folks in Baltimore that are affected by the bridge collapse, but certainly supply chain disruptions. That port will be closed for a little while, which means those supplies, cars especially, will have to be sent through other ports. And that could start to have a little bit of an inflationary pressure that is just due because of a disaster like that. So mortgage rates are holding steady, but we could see a little bit of volatility later this week. On Friday, we have the Federal Reserve Bank's favorite measure of inflation, which is the personal consumption expenditures report, which probably isn't going to move too much from where it was. And unless we have a surprise in that number, I expect will be a status quo here for the next week or so. Having said that, we're still seeing, as Mark has mentioned, and as you can see from the numbers every single week, the wheels in the bus are going round and around, and those properties that come on the market are going off just as fast. And oftentimes, especially at the lower price points, it's multiple offer situations. And so you need to have a strategy on how to address those, and financing is a big part of that. So if you're not working with Mark and his team, or if you need a second opinion on lending, let us know, and we'd be happy to give you some strategies on how to deal with those multiple offer situations.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast yesterday, this real estate podcast, and they had someone on from Zillow, and they were talking that the surveys that they do of people that have interest rates, current owners with interest rates under 5%, previously like those people were sitting and not going anywhere, with those low interest rates. And they said, I think over the next 3 years, at 20% of them, I believe, if I remember correctly, we're going to be thinking of selling their house, which we kind of had that rate lock, people locked into their houses, and not wanting to move because I'm going to exchange my 3%, sub 3% interest rate for a 6% interest rate, doubling my interest rate. I think we're at, right now at 40-year levels, the average 40 years at just below 7%, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, Russ, but, so we're at that kind of average, price point. When I bought my first house in 2007, I was at like a 6 point, 375, I think is where my interest rate ended up being. I was like, oh, that's great. When I bought my house in 2007. And so I think we've just been, the buyers right now have been used to that. And then all of a sudden now, and it is, you have all the, the inflationary pressures and cost of everything has gone up. And so you just have to be mindful of that, of what's going on in that process. I know, homeowners insurance I've seen has gone up, just across the board, in certain areas of the country, you can't even get some, in the high risk areas with the hurricanes in Florida and California and the forest fires and those natural disaster type areas. I know here in Nebraska, we've got the wind and the hail and that kind of stuff that, some, I know one of my insurance companies that I had, left Nebraska. So I had to find a new one, type of thing. So, those are all just things that we have to navigate through. And we're here to help, from that perspective, from either from Russ from the lending side of it, or from myself from the real estate side of what works best. What are the numbers telling you? Where are you going to be at? But I think, the general public out there is really getting, bullish, getting ready, to not sit in their homes. And, hopefully that's going to ease some of our supply and demand. I know we've talked before that, we're at about a 5 million short, 5 million homes, short in the US in general. And I believe last year, I think it was right around 700,000 new construction homes were built, and we talked about that last week, that, that's going to take some time to catch up to that 5 million. And there's more buyers. I know the census data we've talked on this video, probably last year, the year before, that basically for every birth, I think was it 1991, every subsequent birth year after that, there's more births per year every year after that. So our population isn't going down, in the 1990s. Those, prime, those people are, turning 30 years old. That's a prime, age, home buying years, family, careers, getting their careers going, getting in the housing market, and, I think it's just going to be, a good time to buy now, as we try to navigate through those waters. That's what we're here for, to help coach, educate you, get you a plan. I was working with one of my previous past hockey players that I coached, and, they're getting engaged, and he's, excited to get buying a house. And that might not be for a year or so, but it's, hey, what do we need to do? Here's our plan. Here's where we're at. What is it going to cost to get into a home, and just navigate those waters. And it's never too early to have a plan, in place to accomplish those goals, and, and go from there. So, but that's what we're here to do, help you. So I hope everyone has a great holiday weekend. We did have our Easter egg hunt last weekend, and that was great. We had, even the weather's, kind of flurried a little bit, with about 150 or so kids out there. So it was great to see them. You can check out those pictures on our Champions Real Estate Team Facebook page. So you can jump on there if you're at the event. You can print those, save those, share them, whatever you'd like to do on that. But and we'll be out there again next year. Usually it's a Saturday before Easter out at Walnut Grove Park, over by Millard South off 150th, 152nd and Q Street. So awesome. Well, I don't have anything else. Russ, you got anything?
Have a safe weekend, everybody. And for those of you that celebrate Easter, happy Easter.
Yep. All right. Take care, guys.